And I just want to remind people that when we're dealing with presidencies, that they are a public servant. And so certain expectations have been cast by people onto what they would like in their future president. The term is for 4 years. And so a lot is on the line and at stake. All presidents may nod with recognition when reminded of Abraham Lincoln's words from 1864. I claim not to have controlled events, but confess plainly that events have controlled me. So a lot of people do feel like presidents do get swayed and controlled in certain ways. And we're going to discuss that tonight with the team here at Collective Sessions. Of course, we want our government to function efficiently and fairly with every tax dollar accounted for. So what a relief that the election is over. We do have the role of the presidency, which accounts for chief of state, chief executive, chief administrator, chief diplomat, commander-in-chief, chief legislator, and party chief and chief citizen. Chief of state refers to the president as head of government. And it can be tough governing. So I'm just going to hand it over to the team to expound on what they felt this week and where we are in terms of the past and headed towards the future. So I'm going to give it to you, David, if you can just expound on a few things, what was going through your mind during the day of inauguration.
All right, cool. Thank you. Good to be back. Good to see you all again. Yeah, no, first of all, I'm glad that there was no violence, or at least none that I heard of. And that sort of thing, that it went off peacefully, was very nice to see. As far as what Joe Biden has done so far, like the first day, in the first hour, he signed 12 different executive orders. Some of them I didn't even know that what he was referring to or reacting to, like the 1776 commission was something I never heard of. That somehow Trump implemented this federal regulation concerning how American history should be taught in public schools. And I guess it takes away a lot of like the facts about slavery and stuff like that. It makes, now I remember growing up in grade school, like we were never taught about that stuff. You know, all these things were terrible things that America did. It was always this, you know, happy, shiny America. So I guess Biden did away with that, which is good, because you should be teaching facts, not just, you know, praise. And other things too, but as far as going into the topic of, like, you know, what I expect from him, there's always the ideological expectation, and then there's the realistic expectation. You know, I expect everybody to do the right thing all the time, but of course, including myself, that doesn't happen. You know, so I'm hoping, my ideological expectation is that he takes down ICE, he forgives all student loans, he opens up the borders, and, you know, he gets rid of all the emissions and going into the air, and I can go on and on and on. Now, of course, none of those things are going to happen because he's already said that he won't do any of those things. But I like some of the steps that he's made so far concerning, you know, DACA, that kind of thing. He's protecting them. He stopped the border wall. He's put a nix on the pipeline. Yeah, I mean, so, but we'll see. You know, I think that one of the worst, if there's a phrase from Martin Luther King Jr. about political moderates and how they're really they're quite dangerous because they care about peace and order over justice. And not that peace and order aren't important, but when you start sacrificing justice just to kind of keep people tame, then there's something wrong with your ideology and your political stance. So we'll see what he does.
Okay. And what do you have to say, Anna?
In regards to the expectations of Biden, I hope that there was a lot of good show where he's for social justice, he's for equal opportunity. He put the Oval Office, he put a lot of historical pieces in the Oval Office that were good. So it does show, that he is being very progressive. And that's kind of like, the campaign was to me very different than what he showed on day one. Day one was all nice and we're in this together, and we're on the right side of history where we're going to help take care of the people. So I hope that that's true. I hope that that's not just for show. The campaign, though, to me was a little rough, because he did say he was in favor of banning fracking, and then he took that back. He did say he was for student loan cancellation, and then there was, oh, we should do this. Oh, we're going to do that. Well, wasn't even president yet, and he already was backtracking on his campaign slogans there. So I hope that the day one does wind up to be day 100 and day 1400. But I'm not going to really expect too much. I'm just going to keep on working for social justice, equal opportunity, and just keep our heads to the grindstone, because no matter what he wants, it's still Congress that's going to be pushing it through. It's still the state. A lot of this stuff is on the state level, schools, police reform. So all of that stuff, he's not just going to be able to wave a wand and say, everything's corrected now, everything is good. It's still going to be an uphill battle. We're still facing tough political times here. We still have voter suppression. So still have a lot of work ahead. I wish he can wave his magic wand and make racism a thing of the past, make education equal. But those are just not within his powers. So I do like that he had a lot of good things to say on day one, and I do wish that that will continue for the rest of his term.
Okay, and what are your thoughts, Ed?
Oh, you don't want to know. No, seriously. My opinion is that Biden, just like Hillary, just like a lot of people in the Democratic Party, are what are called blue dogs. And the other name for them is fiscal conservative Democrats, which tells you right there where they're at. They're leaning more towards the neoconservative side of thinking, and they have to rely heavily on campaign donations. And so they're going to continue leaning in the direction of what do corporations want, not what people want. And yeah, sorry to say that. I actually do not think that Biden is going to change anything. And I do believe that in the past, we've seen many times where Democrats controlled the presidency in both houses. And there's been times when the Republicans controlled the presidency in both houses. And what do we see change? Nothing. We're not going to see change until we either get a third party or we get a true independent in the presidency. Not that, like, let's say, give you an example. Let's say a Ron Paul or a Bernie Sanders won the presidency. They still couldn't pass bills without it going through the Congress and the House and the Senate, because that has to get passed through those two bodies before it comes to the president to sign. But he's a mouthpiece, and he can influence us, and he can make us want to demand from our politicians what to do. So the only chance that we have coming up is if we have a third party president that is not afraid to open his mouth, might get him assassinated, but it's possible, or a third party that gives us the voting power of Europe. For example, in Europe, the two major parties have to convince the third party to sign on with them in order to have 50% and pass a vote. And that third party can ask for concessions for the people. We don't have that. And so therefore, I'm even doubtful that Biden will forgive 10,000 of school loan debt. Per person, I just don't think it's going to happen. Just like you could even say, well, look at least what Biden and Obama did with healthcare. Personally, I think that that was one of the biggest sellouts they could have done, because we had 72% of Americans, which includes Democrats and Republicans, that said they wanted something like a single payer universal health care. What do we get? Mandatory insurance. Why? Mandatory insurance, I mean, just was a windfall to the insurance companies, who are the second largest donors of campaign donations. Wow. And everybody that predicted it said, well, look at, as soon as we're all turned over to the wolves, they're just going to raise prices, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. Look at, they did. It's not, nothing is working out in our favor. And if they keep going this route, then it will, because it's going to collapse, because we're literally like wasting everything. Even a Yale study, and even right-wing Koch brothers study said that we could save $450 billion over 10 years, and 70,000 people per year lives we could save by having single payer universal health care. The Koch brothers said that, even their study, and they're against it. And the study still said it. Did we get it? No. Could the Democrats have pushed it through? Yes. Why didn't they? Because they're blue dogs. End of story. I might sound prejudiced, but prove me wrong.
No, you're right.
So thanks for sharing that. I do agree that healthcare is one of the primary concerns right now. I myself was at a Medicare rally a few weeks ago here in Schaumburg. I'm going to admit that in the northwestern suburbs, Medicare was an issue that wasn't as hotly considered previously, but I mean, even Anna was present at that rally, and we were noticing a significant number of vehicles that were driving by in support of what we stood for. And that within itself speaks that people are wanting some level of change when it comes to at least Medicare. Healthcare is a human right. I do believe that the tax dollars that we pay for should come back to us in the form of healthcare. And I'm pretty sure that most Americans would agree with that. In this time, at least. I mean, I don't know about, if we weren't within a pandemic, but pretty much what we're seeing now is that the government is for at least free COVID-19 testing. And that should expand to include all forms of healthcare, especially when we consider pre-existing conditions and the way insurance does behave when it comes to being readily take payment from people, but yet not provide service or coverage. One of the interesting things I would like to say is that at least we have an international consensus on climate change and the emergency need for that. I think that was important. I'm glad that at least the Democrats in some degree are showing concern about that, whereas previously that wasn't something at the top of the manifesto, so to speak. I do believe that having women in powers and position of leadership is important. I do like the fact that Kamala Harris is representing a lot of minority groups as well. She does have a prosecutorial background. A lot of people do question where she stands on certain issues, but having said that, a person can reform or change. And do you believe that that's the case? I mean, how do you feel about that when we're going to speak about Kamala? David.
What do I think about Kamala Harris?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, no, I think that anytime we can break the racial barrier as far as like public office goes, I think it's a good thing, generally speaking. Now, that doesn't mean that anybody who does it is automatically qualified to hold the office, but she clearly is. She's got definitely a long enough resume of political activity and lawyering activity and that kind of thing, where she knows the law, she knows politics, and she should probably do a decent job. However, I am a little concerned also about some of her past records. and how she attacked, went after, people in California for petty little crimes like pot and that kind of thing. Put a lot of people in jail over that kind of nonsense. And we know that the war on drugs and all the laws concerning drugs are very biased against minorities, because there's actually a really solid argument that that's why the laws were made in the first place. It's because the people that did them were considered lesser people and problematic by the people in control, which were white people. Anyway, that's another story. So yeah, I mean, but I think she's learned a lot from that. I think she's got enough pressure from the left within the Democratic Party to not be so heavy-handed when it comes to lawmaking. I think she got enough flack about it during the debates. Joe Biden did some pretty stupid things too in his past. I mean, he said something, there's some footage of him saying some pretty nasty things. And the 1993-94 criminal bill was still probably one of the biggest reasons why we have so many problems right now with police brutality and qualified immunity and all that kind of stuff, which he's proud to say that he authored it or co-authored it. So let's, but again, I think he's learned a lot since then. I think the whole notion of like what happened last year, and it's happened in previous years, but last year was such a massive example of it, of the racial rioting in the streets and the police brutality and that kind of thing was so overt and went global. That I think the pressure from all that, it's so sort of social pressure on them to do the right thing, I think is evident in their speak and their demeanor right now. So I'm hoping for the best. I mean, yes, but I'm glad to see him in there over Trump. That's for sure. I mean, that's, I'll say that. But I still agree with a lot of what Ed said. I don't expect a whole lot from this administration because they're still moderates. They're still blue dogs, right? My biggest thing is that not my biggest thing, but a big thing is that he's got to take control of this climate change issue. He's got to do it. The United States federal government, the military itself, it just pollutes so much. And I want to see what he's going to do about that, because you never hear that in the media about the military and how polluting it is. Anna, did you get my article?
I did, and I'm gonna share that out to some of the groups too, because I was not aware of that at all, and so that was interesting.
It's pretty crazy
about it.
Yeah, they equate the amount of pollutants that the U.S. military alone puts into the air to about 140 other countries put together. It's ridiculous how much gas and petroleum and toxins they put in the air, plus their bombing tests and their guns, and just holy cow, it's everywhere. Nuclear testing and stuff like that. Are you kidding me? So I want to see him do something about that, which he probably won't, because it's taboo as the president or even a congressperson or senator to go after the military. And it's just, we could reduce the military by probably about 95% and still have one of the most kick butt militaries in the world if that's what we're striving for. Okay, so I mean, it's just, we'll see. But I am glad to see that she broke that racial barrier. 100%, I'm glad to see that.
Okay. Anna, do you want to expound on that article for us a little bit more than what David just indicated?
Well, David actually read and researched it. I opened it up and skimmed it. I have not completed my research on it yet.
So, well, what about budget allocation? How do you feel about that, Anna? I know you do have some ideas, especially when it comes to the state level, but let's break down your views on the federal level.
On the federal level budget, that is another item I have not fully reviewed, but I do believe that if we have the potential savings, like the Yale studies had said for Medicare for All, that's a no-brainer. We're saving money, we're saving lives. 7 out of 10 Americans want it. What's the holdup? Oh, wait, EDW said it. Lobbyist money. So I think that we need to take control of the people who are governing us. We need to have no corporate contributions. The Green Party does not take any corporate contributions. We do that for a reason. And the reason is the corporations do not vote. Money is not speech. And for our government to keep on insisting that it is, and on paper and in practical every day, they're receiving lobbyist money to get their way. And I've always, when I started being an activist 20 years ago, it was brought to me that maybe the people are second-class citizens and the corporations are first-class citizens, because the corporations are always getting what they want and the people are not getting what they want. So are we really second-class citizens? And the corporations are, even though they don't vote, it sure do seem like they have a lot of control in our Congress, where the people, we're scraping here, and COVID has just made it worse. But I am glad that there's a woman vice president. I am glad that she is a person of color. So those are two good bonus points about Mrs. Harris, our vice president. And I do wish her good luck. And I'm sure it's not an easy position. But I agree with David, though. Climate change, it's the first thing on our list. Without a plan to keep our water safe, without a plan to keep our air clean, what are we doing here?
Nothing else matters.
And fast.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes. You can't healthily inhabit a dying planet, and every other right or, you know, financial, fiscal, economic interest will fall to the wayside if you can't breathe.
Yeah, I mean, the burden that they have is high, and the expectations are also high. I mean, he came in talking about healing America. It was very divisive. People also expected protests on the day and so forth. So, I mean, people were bracing for a state of anarchy, or even the possibility of militia taking over. But we're kind of lucky that that all never happened. But having said that, we still are, I don't know. I mean, how hopeful do you feel? Do you feel like Obama instilled greater hope when he came in and, you know, had Biden underneath his wing? Or do you feel that Biden can give us greater hope today? Do you think that Biden is the best qualified for the presidency, or at what point do you think Kamala is going to step in? These are some questions that are looming in people's minds. I know there was a poll that was taken that said 44% of Americans think it's too early to tell whether he will be successful or not. And his handling of COVID is yet to also be seen. I know there was possible implementation of travel restrictions. I believe that was just hot news coming in. I didn't even get a chance to further look into what that was about, but because we were just about to go on air. But I mean, these are some things that we have in mind. And I know that the rest of the world has pretty much coped with the COVID better than we have. And that is unfortunate. I do often question as to whether the availability of healthcare is part of the problem. I would like the current administration to look further into that. We are also working on reparations in our collective session series, and I do wonder if they are considering the Black Lives Matter movement and whether they believe that reparations should be given or not. These are a few things that I would like to propose, or, you know, bring to the table. And then, of course, the international relations. I know that the security appointments are diverse, but having said that, we don't know what to expect. I think a lot of people do not believe in military aggression, and that even stems to in the policing that we see happening on the streets. Some of the weapons that are utilized are, you know, on a military level, and that's concerning when you're dealing with civilians. So I'm going to let Ed talk a bit more about what he feels when it comes to the breakdown of the issues, how the Biden-Harris team will rank things. He talked about the Blue Dogs further. So if he wants to expound on any changes he's seen in their approach at all.
No, you know, I'm of the opinion to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. I I would like to see Harris be everything that, you know, people would like her to be, and that she's going to be like a new, fresh face and a fresh idea, a woman in the spot. But I think that she's part of the clique. The fact that she got maybe 2% of the primary vote, I don't even think that she should be where she's at. But not that a woman couldn't. There are plenty of women that are definitely qualified and able. I have my doubts in her. It's just my own personal opinion. But I think her past, she has a lot to overcome in order to prove, you know, that she's something different. And I'd like to see it. I don't think I will, but I'd like to see it. So not much else to say. I'm not
That's
impressed.
An interesting point about this. Sorry, that's an interesting point about the 2% in the primaries. I didn't know it was that low. And you're posting things on Facebook, which I love. I mean, you know, the way you said this a long time ago when we first started this series about how, you know, you'd vote against the Democrats just because of what they did to Bernie Sanders, that kind of thing. And you really got me thinking as to like what exactly they did to Bernie Sanders and how they ostracized him, even though he was probably dominating or at least competing with the numbers in his rallies and stuff like that with any of the other candidates. People love Bernie Sanders. This mitten thing has got to go. Okay, there's way too much mitten stuff on Facebook, but I'm just kidding. You love it? It's everywhere.
The one that got me was the one where he's on the moon.
On
the moon, right? Where else can we put him? But no, but the whole point that meme is getting more notice than the president himself is getting is an interesting point. I mean, it's a little bit of a measure of things, and it's really unfortunate what they did. You're right, though. I mean, but so speaking of the popularity of a Democratic candidate in the debates, the primaries, you would think that he would pick the second most wanted, which probably would have been Bernie or Elizabeth Warren or something like that. Yeah, so it's interesting. You know, you bring up just a very interesting point about this 2% of the primary thing. I didn't know it was that low. I thought she did better than that. But anyway, that's all.
No, that is true. I mean, it was an extremely low representation, but you know, at the end of the day, somehow she got in.
Well, that's because she's of that ilk. They picked her because she fit their qualifications, which is unfortunate. And as far as I did want to say something regarding what David said about Sanders, you know, I don't care what anybody says. If you would have told me that, well, Sanders did better in the exit polls, in 50% of the exit polls, and in 50% he did worse, I would say, well, that's chance. But he did better in the exit polls in 100% of the exit polls. That tells you that something's not right. Yes. He did really in 100% of the exit polls. Bernie scored better than what he actually scored in the primary, which is that says I mean, what are the odds of 100%? Right. And just like when he ran in 2016, he was filling 50, 60,000 seat sports arenas, and Hillary wasn't filling a high school gymnasium, but she killed him. Give me a break. Right. No, this is set up. It's set up from the beginning. Whoever they get to decide who even gets to be nominated. And like you've even mentioned in the past, Aaliyah, and I think even Anna mentioned something about it. And I also have another friend who mentioned something about it. You can't even run unless even as a write-in, unless you meet certain qualifications. Well, that's kind of crazy. I mean, write-in is a write-in. I should be able to put anybody I want down. If I want to vote for David, I should be able to vote for him, and it should count. But it doesn't work that way. I mean, nobody will recognize anybody unless they can get in all, like Jo Jorgensen. She's the only other person that was on the ballot in all 50 states. What? There was no Green Party? There was no Green Party person that could have ran in all 50 states. Give me a freaking break. And I'm not a Green Party person, not yet anyway. I know you guys are trying to convert me, but but why didn't you see a Green Party candidate for president in all 50 states? They can't just make it. Yeah, they could, because the Democrats and Republicans don't have to do anything special to have a seat. And people don't even know it, but they're also, I think the contribution limits are 35,000 for a Republican or a Democrat, but 5,000 for everybody else. What is that? How is that fair?
Yeah, no, it's not.
Our whole system is screwed up. So, excuse my French.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, when I ran for under the Libertarian flag, I mean, it was, the Libertarian Party and the Green Party of Illinois got together and sued the state because of the lockdown from COVID, and because the numbers were so high. I think we had to get like 12,000 signatures or something stupid, compared to like 800 to 1,000 if you're a Democrat or Republican. So that was, completely implausible, because we weren't allowed to go outside and you had to get handwritten signatures on the petition. Also stupid. So they sued the state, and the judge officially said, "You're right, we'll make it 10%. So now instead of 12,000, you only need to get 1,200, which was still a lot, turns out. And you can do electronic petitioning." So when we heard about the electronic petition, we were like, "Oh, easy, no problem." I mean, I got 5,000 friends on my personal face, however many thousand friends on my radio show pages, that kind of thing. I'm like, no problem. So I put the electronic petition on my Facebook page, say, "Hey guys, running for Congress, this, that, the anything." You know how many signatures I got out of 5,000 supposed friends? Like 12. Like, it was ridiculous. It was an abject failure that nobody expected. We're like, "Oh, easy peasy, electronic. People can just type me in and not do anything, exert any energy." Nope. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was just absolutely ridiculous. And you're right, it's not fair. You'd think that even politically, you would actually make it a little bit easier for the underdog to kind of rise up to the same level as the big dogs, if you will, because the big dogs are already established. I mean, that's what leveling the playing field can mean at times, is you kind of give the underdog a little bit of more of a boost than you would give the people already in power. But the fact of the matter is that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party run everything. So they're the ones that are making these rules about petitioning and stuff. Who else do you think is making it?
Exactly.
And they're doing it to protect themselves. And even libertarians that got on the ballot, and I'm sure this happened with Green Party candidates too, this might happen to you. So like for libertarians, it tended to be like Republicans would go after them and try to legally get them banned from the ballot for like, "Oh, this signature here doesn't make any sense. It's illegible, whatever, blah, 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 blah," until they reduce the petition signatures down to not enough. Now with the Green Party, you tend to have Democrats do that towards them too. And that's that kind of thing. Anna, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I had my petition challenge. It was brutal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I'm like, why would they do that? Why, if they think we're so inconsequential as being third parties, then what the hell are they afraid of?
I never understood the fears. I never understood the fears.
They're cowards. They're all cowards.
No, it's all a matter of control. In other words, if you only have two to pick from, and both of those parties are the same, and they are. I mean, granted, they differ on abortion and guns, and that's it. End of story.
That's about it. You're right. Trump does not represent the Republican Party. So the extremity of his administration does not represent normal Republicans, because you can make an argument against how different Biden and Trump were. But like you take a token like a George W. Bush or something like that, and Biden, and there's very little dissimilarity between the two. Very little. You're right.
When I tell people about ballot access suppression, about how it takes less than 800 petition signatures for a Democrat or Republican to be on a state rep, and 16,000 for a new party, people cannot believe it, that this is happening right here in Illinois. And with that judge's order, it was agreed that the judge's order would stand, but then it was appealed so we would, so I believe it was the Illinois State Board of Elections that appealed that judge's order. So we would have received no relief, no COVID relief. It would still be all the same petition requirements, which is way more than what's required for the established party. And then we would have the original petitioning dates, which was at the started after the primary. So if that appeal was not affirmed, none of the third parties would have gotten on the
I didn't
ballot.
even know about their first one.
Yeah, and so so it's such a struggle to just get on the ballot. And then I ran as well in 2020, and when you're on the ballot, then that was July 20th when I filed. It was about 100 days until the election, where the established parties had begun last Labor Day in 2019, the day after Labor Day in 2019. They start in early September. So they already had a whole year. The endorsements were mostly closed. And I've learned that they might typically be closed in March. And so that might be traditionally not giving any third party candidates the chance to be endorsed by some of these unions, the chance to be endorsed by the Sierra Club. We might not even have that chance to even seek that endorsement unless we know we're going to run, but we just don't do the petitioning until after the primary. So I know Democrats sometimes call Green Party candidates late minute spoilers, and I welcome them to bring that information to the State Board of Elections and let them know that maybe Democrats don't want late minute spoilers. Maybe we should just all start at the same time with the same signature requirements and let it be fair. Let fair elections happen in Illinois.
Let them happen everywhere.
Let them happen everywhere. Oh, and Edward, Howie Hawkins was the Green Party presidential nominee for 2020, and we were in 48 states. We got kicked off of 2.
Right.
So Wisconsin, they still had their physical signatures. The court said no to e-petitioning. We had e-petitioning. It wasn't as great as we originally thought. So there's definitely things to work out, but I think it all starts with fair ballot access. There should be no reason why there should be suppression here, except to keep people in control.
Yep.
Yeah, I did feel that the presidential debates lacked substance and it wasn't focused on issues, but I am glad to see that now that we have the presidency and the transition from having Trump to now Biden is more focused on issues right now. I do feel that things are a little too quiet for me. I'm used to having tweets go every day and a whole media circus that sort of followed. And I do feel that having Trump gone is not really good when it comes to terms of media and the press coverage and the amount of money that they were profiteering off of some of the media spin that was played. And it wasn't just within the USA, it was globally. People saw this and they were just amazed at how much power this man had in his hands, or it was perceived that way. I'm not sure if Biden is seen by many as powerful or if he's seen as a weaker candidate. I mean, I'm not sure if that's something we want to discuss, but at least when it comes to leadership, people do look to somebody. And they generally preference is for a strong leader, but I think there are other character traits in Biden that people found more appeasing, including perceived empathy. And Biden does have a good record when it comes to getting along with people. I think he's just generally perceived as a nice guy. Maybe it's his story, some of the events that took place in his life that have shaped his character and understanding towards people. A lot of people do perceive Trump as more narcissistic in character traits. Do you think that will make a difference in when it comes to policy making, or whether or not it's the people that hold the positions within the cabinet that are the actual policy makers. I'm going to look to you, David, to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, that's probably one of the parts of his presidency that's going to be the most effective, is he's been in politics a long time. I think 47 years, if I'm correct on there. It's real close to that, if not right there. And been in Congress and the Senate and vice president for 8 years. And he knows a lot of people in Washington. And now that he has all three branches as mostly Democrat, hold on a second. My cat isn't anyway. I think that's going to again be a testament to his effectiveness as a president. He'll probably get a lot more done because of those relationships, the experience he has. People in DC like him on both sides of the aisle, and that all three branches are now democratically controlled. So yeah, we'll see.
What about you, Anna? What do you think when it comes to strength and character, ability to work with people, or do the cabinet holders, are the people that hold the actual power and the decisions that are then endorsed by a president? Do you think people should be looking at those people with a greater eye of scrutiny, or whether or not it should be Biden that should be solely accountable?
Well, Biden is the executive person, so he would ultimately have the sole, we should look up to him as our president, as I do. But I think he picked some good some good departments, and I hope that they work hard and bring some changes to the table, and I hope he listens, and I hope he makes the right decisions for the people. I'm not sure which corporations, if any, have contributed to his campaigns and whose shares are going up because he's president. Besides, I think PepsiCo, is one of the corporations that was advertised on Democratic home kits. So, we'll see what happens. Way better than Trump, obviously. But anybody here on that phone, on the Zoom is. So, I want to go back to Bernie for a minute, and I'll go back to 2016. I wish that the Democratic committee picked Bernie as vice president, because they pretty much just threw out all of that young political energy and just tossed it out the window like nothing even mattered, and put Hillary. I don't even know who her VP was. I don't remember. But how did you do that? Why did you do that? They could have had such a good had all those political votes, had the climate change be an item, had people first. But is that what the Democratic committee wanted? Did they want the people first? Did they want Bernie's ideas to be in the White House? I don't think so. No. I think he's not a blue dog, he's not a corporate dog. Huh?
He's a socialist. He's a socialist. He said that. And Biden and Nancy Pelosi and the Clintons have made it very clear that the Democratic Party is not a socialist party. They are capitalists. So when you have somebody in the party saying, I'm advocating for democratic socialism, they don't like that. And that's probably the main reason he got ostracized.
I think it is. And I know that that Howie Hawkins had invited Bernie to talk about a position here, and Bernie did not want that. So I don't think that it was the Democrats is the right home for Bernie. I don't think that he's very welcome there. And I do hope that everybody who shared that meme goes on a petition for climate change, because that's a lot of people who are spending their time sharing Bernie memes.
Bernie memes.
memes, yeah, instead of, spending their time doing climate change stuff, or if they are doing climate change stuff and sharing the memes, fine. But I think we need more, and I think it's all up to the people to want more and demand more. And so I hope that energy doesn't go away, because it is kind of silent now that, the last couple days, and even the last few days of Trump's presidency, it was all kind of silence. And silence is not always a good thing.
Yeah, I am sort of surprised at the amount of the Bernie memes that were being shared. I didn't expect that at all. Honestly, I thought Bernie's fallen off the map now. No one cares about him. And it's just taken off in a weird way. And I'm not sure if it is that energy that we saw that was the youth and the movement behind some of these policies, or whether it's a reminder to the Democratic Party that we still are here and we still cheer for Bernie. I'm not sure, or whether it's just a comical thing to see this man at the presidency who wasn't really, in their eyes, perceived to be, he was more choosing comfort over anything else, and warmth, and more of a fatherly figure than anything, or looking to him for a source of comfort. I'm not sure. I don't know what's behind those memes. I'm still sort of trying to work out the psychological of why people are doing this. And that still is baffling me. I'm trying to work it out still, but I think it's very soothing to see that he is alive in the terms of the cause is still there, or people are sharing some form of solidarity with him. And perhaps that they want to show Biden that, look, for some reason that there has been the transition of presidency, but everything is still very quiet. And I'm going to go to Ed. I'm going to talk about the socialism term and why Americans are so scared of this. There's also the throwing around of the term communism, why people believe that Bernie or these socialists are the greatest threat to democracy, that we need to be more sort of liberal conservative. Ed, if you could just expand on some of the reasons that you believe people hold with such, fear or even disdain. I'm not sure.
Well, first I want to say that meme, that's just letting the Democratic Party know that Bernie's everywhere.
He's alive and
And
well.
literally, and so are the Bernie followers. Now, the problem with Bernie's campaign, even somebody should have reworked it. Like I heard this guy, he was pretty intellectual guy, even though he didn't appear to be. He said Black Lives Matter should have never been called Black Lives Matter. It should have been called Black Lives Matter too. And then you wouldn't have the people saying, well, white lives matter, blue lives matter, because all they're saying is that they should be counted too. They weren't in respect to the others. Well, the same thing applies very easily. They can get Bernie wrong by calling him a socialist. He's not a socialist. Even a lot of Western European countries said that when America said we're socialists, we're not socialists. They're not. Everybody has the definition wrong. And if Bernie says he's a socialist, then that's his aspirations, not his actual actions. Because socialism is the government control of the means of production. And nobody that was running this year, nobody, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, nobody was advocating for the government control of the means of production. What they should call Bernie is a social democrat. And the reason why is because he's for democracy. Social is just part of it. In other words, just like the word Nazi. Nazi was nationalist, such and such, socialist, whatever. It wasn't true socialism. It was nationalism. The emphasis was on nationalism, and he just threw socialism in to throw a bone to the people to get them on board. Well, the same thing comes with social democracy. The real focus is on the people, democracy, with social programs. So those Western European countries are social democracy. Basically, Bernie is, for all practical purposes, until like, he's for free enterprise. He might not be for what all the corporations are doing, because that's not free enterprise, but he's not trying to change the American system. He's trying to change some things in America to make them more people oriented. So we should be correct and say that he's a social democrat, or his party is social democracy. And the emphasis is on democracy. But the word socialism and communism, they've just been taken so out of context. And it happened as early as when I was in the military under Reagan. It was part of the Cold War. We got to make the other guys sound bad. So we're going to use these words, socialism and communism, which nobody freaking understands. And so if the government says they're bad and we don't understand what they are, well, then the government must be right, because they know more than us, because we don't know what they are. And we just went with it. It has nothing to do. I mean, that was all scare tactics and lies. They didn't educate us. They gave us false terms. And when you false frame something, I could get you to believe anything by lying statistically and show you the statistics. But then when I show you the whole truth, you'll be like, oh, I see. You're being tricky. Yeah, that's what they're basically doing. There was only one communist country in the existence of modern history, and that was America. America was the only thing that got close to communism, and it says it right in our history books, and this was before Marx even defined it. All of the colonial people put into the commons house, and they took out as they needed. That was it. That was communism. We all worked together, or else we wouldn't have survived. We wouldn't have made it through a winter in America, because we couldn't handle it. We didn't know the New World. We didn't even know the types of plants they had. We needed the Indians. We needed to work together, or we wouldn't have survived. But are we done? It says recording.
Yeah,
I guess so.
All right. So much for that.
It says we're still live on YouTube.
we're still live though, so we'll keep continuing.
Yeah, I just think that there's, people need to study more so that they can learn what words really mean.
I agree with you. Hopefully this new US presidency will revive some of the hope that was, behind some of the Bernie movement. Not just that, even with some of the Republicans, I just hope that people are able to come together, realize that we're in this together to work for a cause, to work for everybody, and that the presidency has a global impact. It's not just even at a national level. And I'm glad that at least we're being received and heard by everybody. Hopefully things are going to become better. And let's just hope that, Biden does build back better. At least right now we're all sort of optimistic. We do see some positive change. We still do remember that Bernie is around and able to advocate for us all. And on that note, I'm just going to end it there. Thank you all for tonight's session.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye, guys.
Good night, everybody.